Devil's birthday to you, Nick Villano, Pucks and Pitchforks editor-in-chief. He is 90 years old today. I'm just kidding around. I am your host, Sam Wu, here with the birthday boy, Nick Villano, on episode 73 of the State of the Fan Address, titled, of course, appropriately, The Birthday Podcast, all live on the Let's Go Devils podcast, social media pages on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Nick, we are live. You're in Tampa. Happy birthday, my friend. Big podcast tonight. If you wouldn't mind introducing the two guests, not one, but two guests that we have here on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so first we're going to be talking to JD Burke around 8:40. JD Burke, if you don't know, you've definitely read his work. Even if you don't know that you were reading his work, he's the editor of Elite Prospects. It's basically the biggest prospect page in the world. It's the one that is my go-to. It's the one that's probably most people's go-to. I see a lot of people embedding it in their articles when talking about prospects. So it's a powerhouse in the prospect game. So we're very lucky to talk to him. They have their draft guide out. This is the first year that they're doing their draft guide, Sam. It was already about 500 or so pages. They just added 600 more pages. So that is 1,100 pages of prospect reports for the 2020 draft. There's no other place that you can get that premium content. And Sam, I mean, you go out there and you try to get one of these fantasy football books, and they'll cost you like $20. $20 for just one of those stupid fantasy football books. This guy's got some of the best content on players that you can't see, that you need the extra research on. And he's charging $9.99 for a premium subscription, and you also get the premium subscription to Elite Prospects. So he's going to come on. He's going to tell us about what he thinks the Devils should be doing in the draft, and he's going to give us some of the best insight that you could get in this business. So I'm very excited to talk to JD Burke. And then, because we didn't want to outdo ourselves, we wanted to really crush content this week. We got Rhys Jessop coming on. He spent this past season, the past couple seasons, as a scout for the Florida Panthers. He's focused mainly on the WHL and that league. I don't know if you know this, Sam. WHL is where Ty Smith and Nolan Foote played. It's also where Braden Schneider and Caden Gooley played. Caden Gooley is the player that I really like out of the WHL for us to draft at defense at either 18 or 20. Braden Schneider is who Samuel from last week. He's the guy that Samuel wants the Devil. Well, he wants the Leafs to take him, actually, because he's a Leafs fan. But he thinks that he's going to be one of the best picks in terms of value on defense. So we're going to ask him about them, and we're going to ask him about Ty Smith and Nolan Foote, how far away he thinks they are. He's going to bring that really awesome scouting mindset to the podcast. Sam, I know it's my birthday, so I'm probably a little extra jammed. I'm feeling really excited. I'm ready to talk Devils hockey, and it's cool because this week, I love when there's Devils news, and I love when we got a specific topic to talk about. But I also love, Sam, when we could kind of just go and we could kind of just riff with each other, and we could riff with our guests. And like last week, we had Sam on, and then the Devils signed Mark Recchi. So it was kind of like, we should lead with Sam because it was 2:30 in the morning for him. But it was also like, we're not leading with the big story. So this week, nothing's stopping us. We can kind of just go where we want to go. And it's going to be an exciting podcast.
Exciting indeed. And we're about to hit that 8:40 mark. So I'm going to send you solo and talk to our Facebook Live group. But you know what? Like a dodo, I forgot to make the graphic. So I'm going to make it right now. So let's keep on talking, Nick, as you're going to be covering for me.
Yeah, so we already got a bunch of comments coming into the Facebook post. A birthday podcast. That's right, Matt Jr. Matt, I saw you asking about. I'm gonna try this name. Arseny Gritsyuk. I think that was it. I saw you asking about him. He actually got sent down from the KHL to the MHL, which is why he hasn't played yet. They had him in the KHL. He didn't get in any games, so they decided to send him down to the MHL. But because of the either or, he hasn't played any games yet. So Gritsyuk is a guy a lot of people are very excited about. He had a good preseason for the KHL, so I'm surprised that he didn't get at least a look in the KHL. But Matt, that's why you haven't seen him. Great, Michael Hay. Great, find a winger to put the puck in front of the net. I mean, I don't know about you, Michael, but I'm kind of sick of people putting the puck in front of the net. I'm kind of looking forward to people putting the puck in the net. That's kind of where I am here. But anyway, I think that. And Sam finally left. That's what I was just telling Sam. I was like, I still see you, Sam. You are still a presence in the podcast. He threw me off a little bit because I turned. I see Sam. What is the Woo doing here? The Woo's still in my purview. But tell me, Devils fans, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to in this draft? Are you looking? I've seen some mixed thoughts on trading a pick. I saw a lot of people on board with this fact for months. Trade the pick for a player who can contribute now. Trade the pick. That pick is going to get us somebody who's going to be good for a long time. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing a lot of people, and I wrote about this because I don't think we should trade the pick anymore. I might have been on the same page with all y'all for a little bit, but now I saw that the Penguins had to trade that 15th overall pick and a really good prospect, their 4th-ranked prospect going into last season, just to get Kasperi Kapanen. And if you had Kasperi Kapanen in the New Jersey Devils, I don't think they're any better at all. I think they are the same level of not so good. So seeing that's what the Devils could get for the 18th overall pick, and then having to add a prospect of, let's say that's, I mean, that's probably like Riley Walsh. I mean, I think Riley Walsh is better. The Penguins aren't the best. I guess it's probably like McLeod. You know, if you're sending Michael McLeod, who still has some upside, he needs work. He needs to get fixed. But if you're sending McLeod, a guy with upside, and you're sending a first-round pick and a really good draft pick in the teens, and then you're just getting Kasperi Kapanen, a guy who's 20 goals, he's fast. He sounds like a little bit better Miles Wood. And I just... He said, you know what he sounds like? This is what he sounds like. Kasperi Kapanen reminds me of what we thought Miles Wood was going to be after 2017-18. Miles Wood was coming off a season where he had 19 goals that year. He looked like he'd be a middle six forward, a lot of fun. He was going to hit people. He was going to run. He was going to be one of the fastest guys on the ice. He felt like he could be a penalty killer at some point where he can really turn some things into shorthanded goals, but it didn't work out that way. So, but Sam, you're back. I can't hear you, Sam.
I'm back.
Oh,
hey, give me a break, okay?
Well, your lips are moving. I can't hear you talking. This is what I see. I just see this.
I've been working 16 hours straight. We almost went to our EBUB, the emergency backup broadcaster, shorts guy, was actually on standby at 8:10 p.m. before we went on. But I'm okay. I'm okay because I got Sam? What's that?
You know what? It's my birthday.
Okay. All right. It's your birthday. It's your birthday. Well, our next guest is the editor of Elite Prospects. His name is J.D. Burke. You can find him on Twitter at @JDylanBurke. J.D., you're on with Sam and Nick on the State of the Fan Address. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How's everybody else doing?
Oh, we're doing great. It's a great time to talk about hockey. I think that there's so much hope with a lot of teams right now. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, maybe not so much for Minnesota, who's making some weird trades. But that's neither here nor there. This is not the Minnesota Wild podcast. This is the New Jersey Devils, the Let's Go Devils podcast. So I did want to bring on your expertise. You have a lot of thoughts on this year's draft. And the Devils have a lot of decisions to make in this year's draft. And this, I mean, I think it's safe to say that this is a make or break draft for the Devils. If they mess up on this draft, it could put them back another year or two in the rebuild, which has already lasted a long time. So let's get right to it. Let's get right into that 7th overall pick. I think that's probably one of the more important picks the Devils have had in a long time, just because of who might be there, who might not be there, the decisions that they can make. So, JD, why don't you tell me, when you look at this Devils roster and you look at what the direction that they're going and the names that are going to be available there, possibly Lucas Raymond, possibly Alexander Holt, possibly Marco Rossi, Jamie Drysdale, who do you think the Devils should at least hope falls there? Who do you think that they should be begging the other teams to skip out on so the Devils get a gem at 7?
Yeah, I mean, if Lucas Raymond is available at 7th overall, I think you have to sprint to the stage and make it happen. I mean, he is a phenomenal prospect. We entered the year at Elite Prospects, holding him in the esteem of the top 3 alongside Alexis Lafreniere and Quentin Byfield within that same tier. And you know what? When we finished the year, the more eyes that we got on Lucas Raymond, that's the conclusion that we arrived at as we put together our draft guide as well. I think he's, you know what, he might not be the best winger in this year's draft. I mean, you look at everything that Alexis Lafreniere can do, pretty hard to top that, but I think he's the most complete winger in this year's draft. And that is really something that just gives him so much translatability to the next level. And I think it's going to bode well for him long term. I mean, everybody's going to look at his depressed scoring totals with Frölunda in the SHL. And I think that's kind of resulting in something of a disconnect between the way that we've rated him in the public sphere relative to his actual ability. But I mean, you look at a player like Raymond, who's only playing about 8 minutes a night. He's playing with 4th line help, not getting the power play opportunities necessary to produce at a level that is commensurate with his talent. I think, frankly, you look at his tools, you look at everything that he's worked towards. This is a player who, to me, screams top line winger upside. So if I were the New Jersey Devils and Lucas Raymond is there at 7, I'm sprinting to the podium and I'm running away as if we are, in that IKEA ad, start the car. That's what I'm doing. Lucas Raymond at 7th overall.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on this. I don't understand why people have Lucas Raymond falling in the first place. But I've seen probably, I mean, I look at too many mock drafts for my own health, but I've seen at least a dozen where Lucas Raymond is available at 7. And some Lucas Raymond is available at 7, the Devils don't take him. That makes me very surprised. If Lucas Raymond, if a player like that caliber falls to 8, that's just plain insanity to me. Now, I've seen some people really talk about, and I've seen a lot of people talk about Jake Sanderson at that pick, and I'm completely out on it. I don't want that to be the pick, but I've had people come on here and tell me I'm wrong about this, and I've had people come on here and tell me that they agree with me. So I'm curious and you could take other picks as well, like maybe you like Yaroslav Askarov, since the Devils do have some questions in net. Maybe you like Anton Lundell, who's a person who people really like. Is there anyone else outside of the Holtz, the Raymonds, the Rossies, that kind of that quadruple picks that are expected to go right there? Are you seeing that the Devils could make a move for anybody outside of them?
Well, I don't know about outside of that group, but I frankly couldn't understand why, if you're a Devils fan, you would walk away upset with the Jake Sanderson pick at 7th overall. I think he's right up there with Jamie Drysdale. So if you rate Jamie Drysdale within that top 5, why not Sanderson at 7? And I look at this player. We just did a scouts poll, Elite Prospects, for our draft guide, and eventually we started referring to it sarcastically as the Jake Sanderson poll, because default answer for so many of our questions and so many of our opinions was basically, well, Jake Sanderson. There's just no holes in his game. And another thing that we really appreciate about him, and this is an area where he really excels relative to his otherwise very well-rounded skill set, is, he has the best transition data that Mitch Brown has ever tracked in 4+ years of doing this. I mean, that to me really speaks highly to his quality as a puck mover. I think he's somebody who showed a lot of growth over the course of this year. I mean, the player that Jake Sanderson was in our final viewings compared to what he looked like at the USHL Fall Classic at the beginning of the year, I mean, it's completely night and day, right? And that's what you want to see from a player in their draft year. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to look at Jake Sanderson and they're going to see those box car stats, and they're going to say, well, this player doesn't have the offensive upside. He's not a flashy or a sexy pick at number 7. But, I mean, look, NHL comparables are totally fraught with all sorts of errors, and I've got all the time for that. Believe me, I get it. But if you could get Jacob Trouba at 7th overall, I don't think there's a team in the NHL that's walking away from that pick complaining. And I think that really you look at Jake Sanderson, you look at his physical tools, you look at his development, I think that he can be that player. And another point that I would make on the offensive totals is he's not in a position to produce like a Jamie Drysdale. I mean, you have to remember there's so many players on this national team development program, and they just rotate their defense pairs 1 through 4. And I say 4 because they basically have a 4th defense pair on that group. He's not getting the plum offensive deployments. He's not getting those situations where he can really produce and show as a prolific offensive defenseman. Another thing to take into account is that this was just a really bad year for the national team development program.
That's true.
No avoiding that. And you look at some of the forwards that they had to work with. It could be a while before any of them cross that digital stage, right? Like maybe Thomas Bordeleau goes in the first round, but I'm doubtful of even that. So, when you look at these circumstances and you look at what he did produce, I think it's frankly to his credit. And I think that there's a lot of people who, I can understand with the advances in analytics and the draft sphere, and Rhys Jessop, who's going to be following me, is going to have a lot to say about that, certainly with his history working on PCS. But I think that even taking that into account, this is a player who, when you watch the tape, he does so much, so well, and I think that a lot of people are really missing the boat when they try to criticize him as a potential top 10 pick, because, frankly, I would be more than happy with that if I were a New Jersey Devils fan.
And you know what? There's a lot of people who know a lot more about prospects who have said that, and I feel like, when I consider my personal prospects intelligence, I'm somebody that you would explain as high upside, but definitely not there yet. So I'm going to have to do more research on Sanderson because I just didn't like him when I first watched some of the tape. My biggest problem with him personally is I thought a lot of the things he did well, which is like closing space and stuff like that. I was worried about its transition into a much faster NHL, but at the same time, I could talk myself into that. He's 18 years old and he's only doing with what's in front of him, and he's doing it well. So I will give you that 100% that I'm going to have to do a little bit more Jake Sanderson research before the draft, because there's a good possibility I'm seeing some things that's somebody that, the new coach might like. But, we got a couple weeks for me to close the Sanderson gap is what I'm going to call it. Speaking of defensemen, I'm seeing a lot of people mock the Devils taking a defenseman at 18 to 20 because there's going to be a couple interesting pieces there. But I've also seen some people predict some really good players falling to 18 to 20. I'm going to say his name wrong, but Rodim Amarov. I'm probably saying it. There you go. Yeah, I'm terrible at names. I apologize for that. I'm glad your name was JD Burke because I got that one. That one I'm good at. But do you see someone falling? Do you
say JD?
Yes, it makes it much easier. But do you see someone falling? Is basically the easy way to question this. Do you see somebody who's maybe projected early teens, mid-teens that could fall to 18, and the Devils could get a gem there?
Well, I don't know about projected, but I think there's one player who, he's been so fascinating to follow this year because you talk to people on the team side within the game who have worked with Maverick Bork, whether it's his coach at the Holinka Gretzky. Had a chance to talk with him in the Czech Republic about Maverick Bork, and then you talk to his GM with the Shawinigan Cataracts, and you'd think they were talking about the next Connor McDavid. Nothing but glowing reviews of his game, and even far beyond what one might expect generally from somebody who's talking up a player on their team, right? Like, it really stood out how glowingly they raved about his game. And then even Vasily Ponomaryov, who I spoke with at the World Junior A Challenge, just again had nothing but great things to say about him. And then you talk to people on the team side in the NHL, and they've got almost no time for Maverick Bork at all. And it's a really fascinating disconnect because it's hard to make sense of it. And, I think one of the concerns there is primarily one about his motor. There are questions about his work rate. And there's some really ugly highlights or lowlights, if you will, that show Maverick Bork is just not putting in the effort defensively. But I don't think those are really reflective of his work ethic or his ability. What we found when we partnered with Instat Hockey was that the analytics they had, and when you're talking junior hockey, ice time is an analytic for that league. They showed him playing the most ice time at 5-on-5 of anybody not named Alexi Lafreniere in his draft class. And we've seen this with players like Bowen Byram, for example, last year. And they just start hedging a little bit, and they start taking the occasional shift off because so much is asked of them. But then you look at Maverick Bork and you look at the Shawinigan Cataracts and you go, well, if he wasn't on the ice, who was going to produce? And the answer was Vasily Ponomaryov, but that's it. And they're often on two different lines. So the burden that they placed on his shoulders was so immense. And I'm not going to fault him for taking off the occasional shift in those circumstances. When he's playing that often, he's playing against the opposition's best night in, night out, and generating some pretty phenomenal results. I mean, when we look at the PGPS system, which is kind of an offshoot of PCS, it looks at a player, their year, the production they had, like their stature and statistical-based profile, and compares it to players who feature similarly in the past. 92% of the players who feature similarly to Maverick Bork go on to play in the NHL. So that, to me, I mean, you combine that with his deceptive abilities as a playmaker, his ability to create through his line mates. He's got great offensive instincts. I think that his defensive play is far better than many of the NHL teams I've spoken with give credit. We've got him ranked at, I think, 13 on our final board. It would not surprise me at all if he's available at 18. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was available at 38. So, I think he's somebody who, if I'm the Devils, I would be really happy to take him with the 18th overall pick. Another player, I mean, I don't need to talk him up too much because there's so much out on him already, is Anton Lundell. I mean, NHL just doesn't view him as a high upside option. And I think that's something that's going to limit his stock at the top 15. And you know what? I wouldn't bet on him being available at that point in the draft, but certainly it wouldn't surprise me either if the Devils are walking up at 18th overall, and Lundell is there for the taking. And I could definitely see a scenario where that unfolds. So I think those are two players that I'd really keep an eye on. Another one who's a personal favorite of mine is Brendan Brisson. I think he's got the best one-timer in the entire draft. His production with the Chicago Steel was just through the roof. It was absurd, right? And, I think a lot of people, when they look at Brisson, they go, well, he's on this offensive powerhouse in Chicago. Like, everybody's producing on that team. Well, sure, but he's the motor. He's what makes that team click. He was their first-line center. He won USHL Rookie of the Year. He almost set a new record at the World Junior A Challenge for production. And a little bit like Jake Sanderson, just every single time we viewed Brendan Brisson from October all the way through to the end of the year, he got better. He got better in every capacity, and most importantly, improved his skating and his defensive play. And you knew the offensive instincts were there. You knew he had elite hockey sense, but some of those details, they finally crept into his game. And I think that he's somebody who, am I going to bet on him being first-line center in the NHL? No, absolutely not, because if anything, being a scout has taught me you should always be conservative. However, I think he has first-line upside within him, and I think that's a player, like, if I'm running the Devils draft, he's the one that I'm sprinting up for at 18.
That's a lot to get excited for, because you gave us three really interesting names. I agree with you. I think somebody's going to scoop up Lindell before 18. But I even think that might be something the Devils trade up for. I think that if he falls to 14, they want to jump ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs and try to take him there. I think that'd be an interesting move for Tom Fitzgerald. But to know that there's a couple other players that could be, to have that amazing upside that they do at 18, I think that's going to get Devils fans excited. So you've been looking at this draft in every single direction, in directions we didn't know existed. And you've seen how these drafts have worked themselves out in your years doing this and looking at prospects. So with your expertise, do you have any bold predictions? I mean, this doesn't have to even be Devils related. Do you see something that's good? Do you have a feeling that maybe somebody might jump the draft board, or is there going to be something that's going to get us all talking on draft night?
Well, yeah, I think that's going to be, for one, probably Jake Sanderson. I cannot imagine a scenario based on my intel where he doesn't go inside the top 10. And you know what, justifiably so, but I think that he's kind of become a target, as we discussed, for what I would call unjustified, perhaps not criticism, but reticence on the part of the more analytically savvy draft observers. But you know what, one of the ones I keep coming back to is Tyler Clevens going in the first round. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to anyone on my staff. It doesn't make any sense in any capacity, I think. But you know what? The hockey men, they love them some Tyler Cleven. And my understanding is it actually might even be the Devils who go ahead and make that pick. I mean, there's a lot of talk around the league right now about one of those teams with 3 first-round picks. They're going to be the one that takes that leap of faith with Tyler Cleven. And, it would be hard for me to understand. He was really a player who, you know what, for somebody his size, he finds a way to take away so little ice. He's got some really awful defensive habits. He stops moving his feet as he challenges. He's got a propensity to watch the puck and lose track of his men. His off-the-puck instincts aren't great. It doesn't really bring a lot in the offensive zone either. I think the nicest way one could review Tyler Cleven's game would be to say that he can skate relatively well for someone his size. And, one of the things that somebody on the team side said to me was he's really late to the world of hockey, and particularly high-level hockey, right? Like, he's been playing high-level hockey, I think one scout told me, for about 2.5 years. And so they're saying, he's a late bloomer. He might come along, but he'll be worth it. And, hey, maybe they're right. Who knows, right? Like, there's no such thing as certainty in the NHL draft. If there was, there would be no such thing as undrafted free agents, right? But I have a really hard time seeing a world where Tyler Cleven, even in the best case scenario, becomes anything beyond a 7th, maybe an 8th defenseman, if that.
Yeah, I'm looking at his profile on eliteprospects.com, and for everybody who's out there doesn't know, eliteprospects.com doesn't just post their own rankings; they'll post everyone's rankings. And I'm looking at the rankings for Tyler Cleven right now. Y'all are the lowest on him. You have him. I don't know if this is updated, but currently it says you have him ranked 123rd. But everybody has him ranked in the 60s, 70s. The best you could find is late 30s, mid 40s, and that's just not where you want to take a defenseman. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is this just one of those things like 6'4", 200 pounds, 18 years old? Let's punch our ticket on that. Is that kind of what it sounds like is happening here?
Yeah, I mean, just for posterity, we actually, we flirted with the idea of having Tyler Cleven on our board. We didn't all year, and then our second last meeting, we were like, we're filling out spots. Why not? And then we kept watching him, and as we put together the final board, our absolute final board for the draft guide, it was a complete non-starter. We gave him a do not draft grade. So just for posterity, we do not have an A or D grade anywhere in there. He's a firm F for us. I really do think it comes down to size. I think it comes down to size, and it's one of those things where, for better or worse, the scouting makeup in terms of the people who apply for those jobs and take those jobs. Sometimes it is for the better, other times not so much. I mean, these are former NHLers, which means that they are coming from the league 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? And some of the notions of what it takes to be an NHLer in today's game haven't yet crept into their consciousness. And, you know, I think that's, for me anyway, just about the only way one might explain the Tyler Kleppen thing. Because otherwise, based on his play, I'm not really seeing it.
So before you go, JD, I do want to just talk about this draft guide. This thing is insane. So I looked up the exact page numbers. 1,217 pages of just prospect madness. You guys talk about more than 400 prospects. And, you know, this is just a monster draft piece, and I know a lot of people are looking for some extra reading with quarantine still going on 6 months in, and just, you know, a lot of Devils fans are really trying to get usurped in this draft, and I feel like, you know, Elite Prospects has been on our side when it comes to prospects and draft prospects and everything for years now. Now you guys are putting out that draft guide, and I think that this is just one of the smartest things that you guys have done, and I'm excited to buy it myself. I'm going to, you know, take some of the downtime that you have at work, you know, go in the break, get a couple pages in, but, you know, just give us just give us like 30 seconds to a minute on why you think that the fans, this is a necessary part of their repertoire going into the draft.
Well, it's got everything, right? Like, we try to encapsulate the opinions of not only our staff, but we tried to sprinkle in the opinions of industry insiders as well. And I think that kind of opening ourselves up to that humility, that sort of vulnerability, if you will, I think it adds a lot of transparency to the process. You can also look at every single game report for every single prospect that we tracked this year. I mean, you're talking about over 450 prospects that we have game reports on, and we've got tool grades on them as well, and we've got analytics available as well. But you know what? For me, the most compelling pitch that I can make, and this one, I don't usually put it out in writing because I'm not necessarily super comfortable on this front. It feels very self-congratulatory, but we're really trying to break the wheel. You know, we've got one of the most diverse scouting staffs, I think, in the public sphere. We go above and beyond at Elite Prospects to make sure that everyone is paid top rate, equal wages across the board. We pay our scouts for every report if it's a live game. Like, we're trying really hard to be a force for good in the hockey community, and it's only possible with reader support. And I think that if you're a fan of what we've been doing on the website in terms of our statistical profiles, and you're a fan of what we're doing on the writing side, supporting it is just such a huge part of making that a possibility, right? Like, we're always going to go above and beyond to take care of our own, but it's only a reality because of people's support with the premium purchases. So not only are you supporting a really high-end product and one that I couldn't be more proud of if I tried, but you're also kind of helping us to do our part to make hockey a more inclusive, diverse environment, and also just one where writers aren't routinely taken advantage of, and their work is appreciated, and I think that's something that we take a lot of pride in as well. So I know I went well over my time allotment, but that's something that really meant a lot to me this year.
Oh, no, absolutely. Listen, I'm all for supporting the hockey community when it's good work. And Elite Prospects is some of the most underrated work out there. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. You could ask me and my writers talk about it all the time. I see it get used literally daily in hockey articles when talking about the draft or prospect rankings. And I don't think that it's possible to rank prospects without Elite Prospects. So I appreciate all the work you've done, JD. Thank you for coming on and providing your insight. We'd love to have you on in the future. Maybe we could talk about prospects after the draft, but you know, good luck with everything. I know it's going to be a crazy couple of weeks. We just want to thank you for giving us some of your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And actually, one last little promo here, if you'll allow me this moment. We're going to be putting our top 75 affiliated prospects. We've done tools grades And we've created a new metric called future value, and we're using that to rank every single prospect that has already been drafted to give people an idea of where their team stands going into the draft. It's going to be a 3-article series. Really looking forward to putting that out. And looking forward to people's response to that. So thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And all the best to everyone listening.
Well, thank you, JD. That is JD Burke of Elite Prospects. Boy, Nick, you just took over, and then I forgot that it was my turn. Sorry.
Dog. No. It's good. It's, honestly, Sam, it's funny. It's I do the research on the guests, and sometimes I'll focus on something, and I was focusing on his draft guide, and I was focused on EP Rinkside, I was focused on EliteProspects.com, and I missed one thing. JD Burke just did an article. JD Burke just did an article on the other Hughes. I don't think he's a Hughes brother per se, but he's got the best name of all the Hugheses. His name is Bear Hughes. I think he's their 121st ranked prospect in the 2020 draft, and he just won Rookie of the Year in the which league is it? He's the Spokane Chiefs Rookie of the Year. So he's a teammate of Ty Smith. So he had a great year with the WHL. And he has a story on Bear Hughes and the late bloomer and just kind of how he got to where he is. But I don't know, Sam. I'll take a 6th-round flyer on a guy for his name. Bear Hughes sounds like an NHLer.
Can you imagine Kevin Clark? Is he a forward?
Yeah, I believe so. That's
what's his jersey number?
9.
Do you have any idea? All right. Oh, can you imagine Kevin Clark says Devils goal scored by number 9, Bear Hughes.
Hey, I mean, I think he would get something cool to go with that. And then there's what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Doc Emmerich getting on the NBC broadcast because the Devils are going to have one of the most fun teams in a couple years. So they're going to get that national recognition. You got to get Doc Emmerich on a Devils call soon. And him just saying, the bear in the scrum, what he's going to do with that, and just standing in front of the goalie and blocked by a bear, and just what he's going to do with that. I'm excited already. It hasn't even happened. He's got some work to make the NHL, and he is a late bloomer. So sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But man, I want Bear Hughes in the NHL, Sam.
Just like Jet Wu, I want Jet Wu on the Devils. Can you imagine him?
Jet Wu I'm excited about Jet Wu if he comes to the Devils. I think he's going to be a good player too, and I think he's somebody that can be had from the Vancouver Canucks for the right player. I don't know what Vancouver wants. I don't know what their situation is. They got to figure out their cap. So maybe they can throw Jet Wu into a deal where, maybe we'll take one of their big cap hits. Not Tyler Myers. I don't want Tyler Myers. But any, other players, maybe a forward, one of their bottom 6 forwards who are making like $6 million. I'd have to look to see exactly who I'm thinking of, but I definitely think there are some players there. Is Louis Eriksson still getting paid by Vancouver? Who? I don't even know. but that's the type of thing I'm thinking of, where the Devils just take a really old veteran contract who's got like a year left. You just eat it for this year, and then you kind of you get a Jet Wu in return. I don't know if they would do that. Louis Eriksson is getting paid through 2022, so I would need somebody like Jet Wu to take on that $6 million a year for 2 more years.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get our next guest, NHL scout Rhys Jessop, in momentarily. So, but Facebook Live is starting to have a little chatter. Birthday boy, why don't you get at it?
It's waking up. Everybody's waking up. It's late on a Wednesday. We're 6 months into the pandemic, so we got to get more comments though, guys. Where everybody was just listening intently to JD Burke, and we're we want some. Give us some questions to ask. But you're right. I think Sam's right. This is all my fault because I was absolutely taking over that interview. And, me and JD just had so much information to go off of. And I had follow-up after follow-up because I just wanted to know more about what he was talking about. So, my fault. But now that, we got Rhys coming on, Rhys Jessop. And Rhys is a guy who I've seen around the Twitter sphere for a while now. And I was waiting for the right time to ask him to come on. And, the draft's coming up. And, we had an opening this week. And I was like, you know what? Let me just throw it out there. Let me talk to Rhys, see what he's got going on. And, we're excited to have him on. I think he just knows a lot. The good thing about Rhys is Rhys was able to focus on exactly a specific segment of prospects. So he's just diving in to about 100. And he just gets to I guess it's more than that. But I don't know the number off the top of my head. But instead of having to split his time between so many different people, he has to just dive into these and use his expertise on these specific prospects. And it just worked out because, we're going to get to answer questions on, I told you about Schneider and Gooley, but a lot of you in the comment section have been asking about Seth Jarvis every time we have these prospect people on. And, Seth Jarvis is a player he does know about. So, we'll get to ask him specifically about Seth Jarvis. And there's just a lot happening with prospects that we get to kind of get these people with specific expertises on, and we get to ask them what they know about these specific things. And we get to get a lot of information for a lot of different sources. Sam, I think you have one of those sources on the phone for me.
Oh, we got a great source. Great guy. His name is Rhys Jessop. He's an NHL scout. You can find him on Twitter at @that's_offside. Rhys, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I am fantastic, gentlemen. How are the two of you?
Oh,
Great.
We're doing well. We're doing well. We're about what? We're about 3 weeks away from the draft, I think it is, and we're talking a lot of draft lately. But when it comes to a team like the Devils, we haven't been good in 7 of the last 8 seasons, and Rhys, hope is what we got for us. Corey Priming ranked us 2nd overall in organizational rankings of under 23-year-old players. So it's all hope for us. We get the hope, but we're really happy to have you on. So thanks for coming on, Rhys.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to be on and talk some prospects with you guys. It's a great time of year, even though we're usually doing this back in June. It's always an exciting time of year in the lead up to the draft.
So I do want to jump right in. We want to specifically focus on the WHL because that was kind of your spot of expertise when you were with the Panthers last year. I know last week we had Sam Turpak on, and he was very, very, very high on Braden Schneider. And if you go on his Twitter, he talks about him probably once a day. I personally am quite high on Caden Gooley, but as I told JD Burke with Elite Prospects, who was on right before you, I am what they call high upside when they talk about prospects. I do a lot of research, and I'm getting there when it comes to my knowledge, but I'm nowhere near good yet. So you can see where it's going. So I could definitely be talked into something else. So I specifically want to, because I think that they're going to go in a similar spot. I think teams internally right now are having a conversation between Schneider and Gooley and which one they would take over the other if they're thinking defense in that spot. So where do you see? You saw them both play last year. What have you seen from the two of them, and do you have a way you're leaning on either one of them?
I'll be honest. This is absolutely one of the more fascinating debates in the WHL this year and in the last couple of years, because it seems like you just can't talk about one without mentioning the other and comparing the two. And it is a fascinating comparison. On the surface, it's a very similar profile for both of them. You're talking about two big defensive-leaning defensemen that can skate well and have a good set of tools. But really, when you break it down, they're quite different players. And for me personally, they're very close. So I go back and forth on them myself all the time. I think I'm leaning Braden Schneider at the moment, but again, that just I could have just woken up on the Braden Schneider side of the bed today. When you really get down into it, and I'll start with Gooley here because that's the guy that you like. Gooley is he's a defensive defenseman, but the area of his game where he really excels, in my view, is his transitional defense. He's fantastically mobile, not just for a big guy, but overall. He gaps up really well, and he's very aggressive. When there's a play coming towards him, he can get his stick on the puck, he can step into a player, and he can just erase transitional chances. When he gets the puck on his stick, though, that's a bit of a different story. I've seen him make some very questionable plays in transition on the breakout, and I'm not sure he has the hockey sense to move pucks effectively going forward, but that's not for a lack of puck skill. His puck skill, and particularly working the power play with the Prince Albert Raiders, I think is at least above average for all defensemen in the WHL, if not good. There are some bobbles, but there is potential there for a smooth puck handling defenseman. It's just whether or not his hockey sense will come. So he is, in my eyes, a high upside pick, but he's also a pretty high downside pick too, because if that hockey sense doesn't come, you're going to be left with a guy who is big, athletic, can skate and shut players down, but is also spending the whole game on defense because he won't be able to transition pucks effectively. Braden Schneider, on the other hand, I think is a much more solid all-around defenseman. He doesn't have the aggression and the and the willingness to step up in the offensive zone that Caden Gooley does. But in the defensive zone, I find he's a much more reliable passer. He's very good at eliminating plays along the boards, getting the puck for himself, and finding that first read very quickly and just snapping the pass in to kickstart a transition. He's more of a game manager than Gooley is, but he doesn't have the upside with the puck skill and the skating ability. And he's also very, very old for this draft year. So there is a potential with Schneider that you're getting a guy that is a little closer to a finished product, but overall his game management, his puck movement, and his hockey sense, I think will translate better towards full-time NHL duty, probably in a second pair role than Gooley's. But there's also the upside with Gooley. So I hope I might have cleared up absolutely nothing for you guys, but they're both quality prospects in their own right.
Yeah, honestly, when you look at that 18 to 20 spot and who might be there for the Devils, it's just a jambalaya of different types of prospects. But the one thing that I'm seeing there is that we're looking at upside. We're looking at just tons and tons and tons of upside with a lack of guarantee that you're getting from the top 10. And I guess that's an obvious statement. Like, obviously, you're going to get less of a guarantee at 18 than you're going to get from the top 10. But, I mean, the guarantees that you're going to get in the top 10 this year are just off the charts. You're getting probably 8 of the 10 look like they're going to be superstars. So it's just a really awesome year for the top 10. And then you go outside of that, and everybody looks a lot worse, but in reality, they're very good prospects. One of the prospects that you said that, you know, that was one of the things that split a lot of people. One of the things that I've seen split almost everyone in this community, in this prospect community, is Seth Jarvis. Where did he come from? I mean, he just comes out of nowhere, scores a ridiculous amount of points last year in the WHL, and now he's draft eligible. And I've seen people put him in the top 10 with names like Lucas Raymond, Alexander Holtz, Sanderson, Drysdale, and then I see other people who say he's in the 20s, and I'm kind of on the fence about putting him there. And then you have people who have him in the middle of the round. There's no consensus on Seth Jarvis. So what have you seen? You've watched him for, I don't know if you specifically watched him, but I know that you've been around his teams for a couple of years. What have you seen from him from one year to the next that now has him in this spot?
Well, I have seen a lot of Seth Jarvis over the last couple of years. Obviously, last year we took his teammate, defenseman Johnny Ludwig, in the third round. So Portland was a team that that I personally had been following for the last couple of years. Seth Jarvis, he didn't get the offensive opportunities to really shine as a 16-year-old, but this year Portland does a very good job of bringing their own players up through the ranks and giving them more responsibility as they move up the lineup, and that's really what you saw with Seth Jarvis this year. I'm not sure what the people who don't rate him very highly are seeing, because for me personally, I don't think it's unreasonable to put him in that top 10 mix. I am a huge fan of Seth Jarvis. He does everything at such a high level, and he, for me, is the number one player out west this year. He's a very, very good skater. He's a very good puck handler, and in 2 years of watching the Portland Winterhawks, he has been one of the most consistent offensive generators league-wide. He does a great job of working pucks into the slot, both with his own one-on-one ability, finding dead spaces in coverage to get open for passes, and passing the puck into the slot as well. So for me, he's one of the true dual threat offensive players you can find in the WHL. There are some questions about his game in terms of transitional commitment. There is some cheat in his game, which is something that's pretty common with younger players, especially wingers, and especially in the Portland system. He does tend to fly the zone an awful lot and doesn't really carry the puck through the neutral zone with the frequency that you would like to see. But when he does carry the puck through the neutral zone, he is very effective with it because he is a fast skater. I don't see many holes in Seth Jarvis's game, and for me, he has top 6 scoring forward upside. So he would be an excellent pick, I think, in the middle of the first round. And while 7th or 8th overall is probably a little bit of a stretch because of the potentiality of a player like Lucas Raymond or Alex Holtz falling there, or even Nicole Perfetti, it wouldn't be completely mind-blowing out of this world for me personally to see Seth Jarvis go in the top 10.
That's interesting. And that, I think that answers a lot of questions that people have about Seth Jarvis. I think that, and I think people have just been burned by prospects in the past. So they're like, oh, we've seen this story before, but these kids grow on a different, every single kid grows on a different level. Every player turns into something different. So we kind of have to look at these like snowflakes rather than like, a regimen that we can follow. And, if this kid is turning into that as quickly as he did, and he made the turnaround based on opportunity, that's huge. So I personally like Jarvis.
Sorry, I was just going to add one more thing. It's also worth pointing out that Seth Jarvis led his team in scoring by nearly 30 points, and the Portland Winterhawks were one of the best teams in the WHL. So it's not as if he was being carried by better line mates than him. What you're seeing in terms of his offensive generation is in large part due to his own skill. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with his first half versus second half splits. Based on what I've seen with him, he's been a very consistent offensive generator in his own right. So I personally don't think that risk is as high with Jarvis as it would be for another quote unquote small scoring forward, potentially elsewhere in the WHL, either this year or in years past.
So we got some questions in the Facebook Live group. Matt Junio, he wants to know about if you have any updates on current New Jersey Devils prospects. I don't think you have any updates on the ones that are playing now, but you do have updates on, we talked about Ty Smith and Nolan Foote specifically. What are your opinions on those two players that you've seen plenty of, and they were two of the better players in WHL? What are your thoughts of them, their transition into the NHL?
I'll start with Ty Smith because he was the higher pick, the guy that the Devils drafted. Smith is, in the purest sense, a puck-moving defenseman. Some defensemen that get the puck-moving tag placed on them when they're in junior are guys that can rush the puck through the neutral zone. Smith is a very good skater, but he is almost a pure passer. He makes as many passes as any defenseman, or any player, I should say, I see in the WHL. And he's just so effective at eating minutes and moving pucks. I think he'll probably apprentice in the AHL for 1 year or so before starting to be worked into the NHL. But it wouldn't surprise me for him to make that jump sooner rather than later. I have some questions on his ability to make defensive stops, to win puck battles along the end boards in the WHL, let alone the NHL. So that part of his game is going to have to come along. But the strengths of his game are going to enable him to fit in with an NHL transitional scheme. He's able just to move pucks quickly, efficiently. His hands are very good. He can saucer the puck on his forehand and backhand. So he's coming along very nicely, and I think that the Devils have a good one in him. Nolan Foote, on the other hand, I saw a lot of the Kelowna Rockets, and it was, in my view, probably a very disappointing season for the Rockets and a very disappointing season for Foote. Personally, I don't quite see eye to eye with how he's being deployed in Kelowna. They're using him as a scoring winger. I think his skill set projects better to being a checking center. When I saw him in his draft year, for me, the best games he played was when he was able to play that center position. He was able to be heavy in the defensive zone. He was very responsible. He came back deep, provided outlets for his defensemen. Physical engagement was strong, and he was able just to get pucks on his stick and work them to his wingers and kickstart transitional play. When he's a winger, he's kind of not as involved in the game. He has a great shot, but his feet aren't fantastic, and I do have questions about his playmaking ability and his hockey sense. He did struggle to score at 5-on-5 this year, if I recall correctly. He was, I believe he had mid-30s points in less than 30 games played, and the bulk of them came on the power play. So Foote's a guy that I think is a little bit more of a project. I don't think as high upside in his game as potentially where he was drafted. And I think that the best utility that you might get out of him would be trying to work him back into that center role and letting him play to his strengths, which are being that physical presence and being able to just win puck battles in transition and enable his wingers to work the puck through the neutral zone and into the offensive zone. And then maybe you get some second unit or even first unit power play upside on if you can stand him on his off wing and just have him bomb one-timers, because he does have a really good shot.
And that's the part that I'm excited about, is just how good his shot is. And the Devils only have Kyle Palmieri right now. Even when I'm looking at their prospects, they only really have Kyle Palmieri as a guy who's – and Graham Clark is a guy who really like his shot as well. But I look at the Nolan Foote shot, and I'm just – my mouth waters a little bit. So I get very excited about that. But I think, if you can get him to be a checking line center or winger, maybe you can have him with like maybe a Pavel Zacha, and they can flip flop. One plays center, one plays wing, depending on the situations. I think that could be a good situation. And when you have Hughes and Nico Hischier down the middle already, the pressure is not as much as on a Nolan Foote type player to progress into a first line player, because when you have two stars at center already, I think that can make it a lot easier.
And absolutely, I agree with you there. And that's why it's very important when you're in a rebuild, kind of like the Devils are, is that you draft well beyond those lottery picks. We've seen with other teams, they haven't been able to surround those core players that they've drafted with really high-end complementary pieces. And you really do need to develop those guys yourself as well. You can't just be going out and paying like $4.5 million for this guy in free agency, $5.5 million for this guy in free agency. You need those guys coming up on ELCs. So when your star players are being paid star money, they're providing you with contract value down the roster. So even though we talk about Foote as, in my view, probably not a top 6 guy, there's still a lot of value there, getting a very solid depth player and depth piece that you can work into your lineup in a couple of years' time on an ELC or on a first RFA deal.
Yeah, and Nolan Foote is somebody I did a lot of research on last year because I thought he'd be available in the second round when the Devils picked, because I think they had the 3rd pick in the second round. So I thought that he was going to be there. The Lightning obviously jumped on him in the first round. I thought he was taken a little high, but he does have a ton of upside, and he does have an interesting skill set that a lot of teams are looking for right now. I mean, you think about it, the way you're describing him, I guess he doesn't have the speed that Coleman has, but I'm more saying that he could play a role that Blake Coleman played for the Devils, and I don't know how much of Coleman that you saw, but third-line checker, good shot, tenacity, things like that is kind of, and then he got traded from. So I thought that was kind of an interesting wrinkle. I do want to kind of pivot back to the draft. That's kind of what Devils fans are focused on right now because, well, we don't have much else to go on. We didn't get to play in the bubble. And we see a team like Tampa, we see a team like the Islanders, and, I guess even the Stars. You talked about getting those really good players deep into the draft who you can bring into and you can use as complementary pieces to your stars. Obviously Dallas did use free agency and trades more than the other two teams. But you look at Tampa, the thing that really stands out to me with Tampa is they have 4 insane lines, and unlike other teams, they drafted like 80% of those players, and they got them in all different rounds of the draft. So that leads to my question to you, Rhys. What's a prospect that you've studied that you're waving the flag for, and you're saying this is somebody who's going too late? This is somebody who's going to make a general manager and the scouting staff look really good. Who's somebody that you're thinking from the WHL that is not getting the hype that they should?
Well, he probably won't go that late, probably mid-second round or early second round. But the name that really stands out to me when you ask that question is Prince Albert Raiders center Ozzy Weisblatt. He's kind of overlooked beyond guys with guys like Zary or Connor Zary of the Kamloops Blazers and Seth Jarvis, who we already talked about. And I've even seen some people giving a bit of love to Saskatoon Blades forward Tristan Robbins. But for me, Weisblatt is the number 2 forward out of the WHL this year. He's listed as a wing, played centerman for the Raiders every time I saw him. And much like Jarvis, he's just a consistent generator of offensive chances in the offensive zone. He plays he's 5'10" and I believe under 200 pounds, but he plays a much heavier game than Jarvis. I've seen him throw the hip into guys, throw reverse checks, bounce off of pressure, and take pucks to the net. He does a very good job of operating off the cycle. His hands and tight are very quick. His 2-step explosives probably could use a little bit of work, but through the neutral zone, he's a very adept puck carrier. He does a good job of changing lanes and changing angles. His skill level isn't phenomenal, and his personal finishing in and around the net could use some work, as evidenced by the fact that he had, I think, close to twice as many assists as goals, despite being, in my viewings at least, a pretty consistent scoring chance generator himself. But to me, this is a guy that just plays offense the right way. He works pucks to the slot. He's a dual threat in the offensive zone. He gets himself open around the net. He'll battle for pucks, and he's tough to knock off the puck in the offensive zone. I think that he's probably should enter the equation maybe in the early 20s, but he might be going as late as 40 and maybe later if other teams aren't as high on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely somebody to talk about. If a player, I mean, because you're right. I've seen Zary, I've seen Jarvis. I have, Weisblatt is a name I've heard, but definitely not somebody I've even thought has seen like mocked in the first round. So that's absolutely somebody. If you think that somebody's got first round talent and he's going in the second round, that's huge. I mean, we've seen some of the players that have come in the second round. And Sam, I mean, you've seen some of the players that have been taken in the second round that turned great, and we've seen some of the players. I mean, the Devils have taken some second rounders that have been just plain old duds. So if you can get somebody who can really have a high upside in that second round, and somebody who can, it sounds like he could probably contribute soon. Is that something you're seeing, or do you think he needs a lot more development?
I don't think he needs a lot more development, but I think he's probably a few years away. He's a guy that will probably play through his senior career in the WHL and then be a year or two in the AHL before you start to call him up. But I see a guy there that will play offense the right way and will be able to generate points wherever he goes, just because he's so smart off the puck and with the puck in the offensive zone.
But yeah, no. But Rhys, I mean, that's all I got for you tonight. This was really a lot of fun. I really appreciate you spending some of your time with us. I know this is probably some of the busy time for you. I know this is a weird year though, so I don't know. I don't want to pretend like I know your schedule because things are just strange. I don't know what everybody is doing everywhere else. But Rhys, do you have any work you want to plug, or do you got anything you want to plug for us, or you just want to get the Twitter followers out there so they follow your work on there?
Oh man, this is the hardest question you've asked me all night. To be honest, I'm kind of in a bit of a transitional period here myself, so there's not really anything that I'd like to plug right now. I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me on. This was a ton of fun. I actually didn't know that I'd be following JD Burke tonight on the podcast here, because I'm going to be doing a show with him on his podcast, the Elite Prospects podcast, tomorrow. So that was a funny little coincidence there. Those guys at Elite Prospects do great work. Highly recommend checking them out if you haven't already. Anyways, you can follow me on Twitter at @that's_offside. And again, I just want to say thanks for having me on here.
It's just funny how many coincidence happens through hockey Twitter, but that's hilarious. You definitely, folks, you listen to the podcast tonight. They're going to be talking about a myriad of different topics tomorrow, so definitely listen to that podcast. I'm going to. That's going to be a lot of fun. Rhys, thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. Have a great night.
That is Rhys Jessop. You can find him on Twitter at @that's_offside. Sorry, Nick. I was just kind of a fanboy just listening to this whole interview, and I was dreaming of the mid-second round of what the Devils could pick. And then I realized that's not going to happen. So, yeah, and then when I messed up that transition, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Nick.
you're fine.
It's been a long day. But I stuck it out. I don't take shifts off. But we're going to play the game very soon. But, when we talk about these prospects, Nick, what the greatest thing about it is? We can go back 5 years from now and listen to this podcast, this live podcast that we're doing right now, and be like, yeah, we talked about that guy. Didn't we have a scout on that talked about a mid-second rounder, a sleeper pick that could do it for the New Jersey Devils? Wouldn't that be something, right? You just never know.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Jake Gardner, he was like Minnesota Ice Hockey, Aaron Ness, some of these guys about 13 years ago. And we're just talking about them, and then they made it to the NHL. They were drafted, great players. whatnot. So we're going to get Dave Brown very shortly. And Nick, talk to social media.
Yeah, and just going on Sam's point, that's the fun part about this. That's my favorite part about prospects is falling in love with somebody and them making it to the NHL and being a contributing player. I've fallen in love with some players that have completely broken my heart. Reed Boucher comes to mind. That one hurt. He just never ended up into turning into anything, and that one was sad. But a couple of the other guys, the people who watch Blake Coleman's career from start to finish, or not finish, he's not done yet, but to watch Blake Coleman go from a third rounder to a college hockey player, a couple of years in the AHL, it just took him so long. I think he was 26 or 27 when he became a full-time NHLer. And I remember, I think it was 2017-18, when we were so mad when he made the roster. He made the roster over. Oh, what the heck is his name? His name is escaping me. But we were mad that he made the roster. We're mad that Brian Gibbons made the roster, and they ended up being two of the most important players on that team. And it just shows you never know. You never know with these prospects what they're going to turn into. Even going from the AHL to the NHL. One year to the next, we have no idea how they've progressed in that 1 year. So it's a lot of fun to watch these prospects, and it's a lot of fun to follow their journey. And that's why a lot of people get intrigued with things like NHL 21, which is coming out in a couple of weeks. Hopefully we could try to get somebody on and talk about that because, it's always fun to talk about the video games. But they do the journeys on the NHL video games now that you can go through. And the reason they do that is because we're intrigued by it. We're intrigued by the journey. And the journey is huge. And the journey is a lot of fun. And it's almost like you watch someone grow up. You watch their career grow up. And you watch them turn into a really good player. And that's how you get fan favorites. You get fan favorites by drafting them, by watching them grow, and then them turning into something awesome.
Yeah, just like that fan favorite on Pucks and Pitchforks blog, Vinny Parisi, always bragging about beating me. But there's another fan favorite on the Nova Product Design Hotline. We have Dave Brown. You can find him on Twitter at BrownieNJD82. Dave, are you psyched to play the game and try to beat the Woo? And I put up a graphic of you in the Stanley Cup just so you can feel like a winner. But I have a feeling tonight you're going to be losing.
Well, Sam, anytime I talk to yourself and Nick, I feel like a winner. So beating you in the game would be icing on the cake. But if not, I'm just glad to talk to you guys on the pod.
That's a nice kiss-up answer, but that's okay. That's all right.
So,
lover, not a fighter. So keep it simple here.
So today, since it's my birthday, I thought we'd bring a classical birthday type game and transition it for the podcast. Now, do you guys remember when you were kids playing Pin the Tail on the Donkey?
I do. Yeah.
I played sports as a kid.
You played Pin the Tail on the Donkey, Sam. Stop acting like you had a terrible childhood and they didn't let you play Pin the Tail on the Donkey. So obviously, the concept of Pin the Tail on the Donkey is it's they blindfold you, so you have no idea, and then you're just kind of throwing something at the wall, hoping you hit the target. Well, that's going to be the concept of today's game, because we're going to play Pin the Tail on the Birthday. Now, without prompt, I've picked 6 legendary, current, and 1 possibly future New Jersey Devils player. And I have their birthdays in front of me. They will go. I will tell you this, and this is a little clue. They go in order from oldest to youngest. So don't guess anything before the birthday that went before you. So it's a very simple game. You tell me when you think. I'm going to ask you both the same player. You tell me when you think their birthday is. I need day, month, and year. And whoever's closest gets the point. Easy peasy?
Interesting. It's very interesting. You know, when I used to have the media guide back in the day when they used to have media guides, they always used to like look at their background, where they're from, and birthdays. So maybe slight chance I can remember something, but we'll see.
I got a funny story before we begin. The only media guide information I remember, and I almost got me in trouble at a Devils Rangers game. I remember getting the media guide or something like that, and
Program.
it had, program, and it had something about Tom Pody, and then it's like, Tom Pody's from here, Tom Pody's from there, plays defense for the New York Rangers, number 3, and then blah 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 blah, and then the end it says allergic to peanut butter and chicken.
Wait, how are you allergic to chicken?
I don't know. It's Tom Pody. He was a Ranger. Go ask him. But he said it was allergic. So I started.
Apparently, he was also allergic to winning because he was on the Rangers.
Yeah, and I was behind the bench and I was chanting peanut butter, and I almost got thrown out just for that. But anyway, that's a long story for another day.
Anyway, all right. So you guys ready to play the game?
Yeah, playing the game. I'm playing the game.
All right. So we're going to start off with friend of the podcast, Ken Danico. And we'll start off with Dave. Dave, when is Ken Danico's birthday?
Okay. He had to be 39 years old in 2003 when they won the Cup and he retired. So 17 years to that. All right, I'll say April 21st. April 21st. 1964. I think my math is a little bit off on this, but April 21st of 64.
All right, Sam, what's your guess?
July 13th. I don't know why I'm going to say 1963.
All right, Sam, I don't think you had any chance in this because Dave was 4 days off. Days.
Well, this is a guy that used to read media guides.
Ken Danico's birthday is April 17th, 1964. And maybe Ken wouldn't like us putting his age out there, but everybody owns Google. So sorry, Ken, if you're listening. Sam, you're going to go next. You're going to get a clue on this one. Your player is Bobby Holik. And I will tell you that Bobby Holik was born on an international holiday.
Okay. I don't know. Let's see. Bobby Holik. An international holiday. Is April Fool's Day an international holiday?
I don't know. Is it in your household?
I don't know. I'll talk.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like mac and cheese appreciation day, like actual holidays here, Sam.
October 31st, 1968. I have no idea.
All right, Dave, what's your guess? Dave, you there?
Think we lost Dave.
That makes this a really bad game, Sam.
Yeah, his actually, I was trying to cover it up. His call dropped. So I tried calling him back while still being on live air, hoping that he would pick up, and it didn't work. Maybe Dave was just too afraid to go against the Woo.
Is that your intimidation tactic? You go down in the game and then you hang up on them? Is that our new strategy?
No, I didn't do that. But you know what? I'll try to call him right now. So let me just hopefully he picks up. But no, it just dropped. I know it's not on my end. It's always on the other guy, right? So it's ringing. All right, let's see if Dave has actually picked up. Dave, you're back on the Nova Product Design Hotline. Did you just accidentally drop yourself because hang up just because you're just afraid that I got Bobby Holik accurately?
I thought it was the opposite. I thought it was quite the opposite. I thought you dropped the line on me, being that you could control the call. But it's okay. Moving forward.
All right.
So, Dave, I don't know when you left off, but I'll just give you the clue entirely. So the name is Bobby Holik. And the clue for Bobby Holik is he was born on an international holiday. So what date was Bobby Holik born on?
Okay. A couple years younger than Danico. So let's say January 12th of 1968.
Dave, what international holiday is on January 12th?
To be honest with you, I have absolutely no idea. But just, I figure maybe some sort of, European or some other holiday. I don't know. I'm just kind of going with it here.
Anyway, Bobby Holik was born on New Year's Day, 1971. You're both very off. But since there has to be a winner, because this is The Price is Right, Sam, you get the point.
Woo! Do I get an extra half a point because I participated when Dave got scared?
No.
Okay, never mind.
Moving on. After this, Dennis and Muriel Brodeur welcomed a wonderful baby goat named Martin Brodeur, who ended up being the greatest of all time. Dave, when was Martin Brodeur born?
I feel like it was a June birthday. Maybe wrong, but I should know this. Being a big Marty guy, I'll say June 10th of 72.
Sam, what's your guess?
Well, I remember Marty's 40th birthday against the Philadelphia Flyers in the playoffs. And I believe I dressed up like Marty with the happy birthday, gear. So I would say May 6, 1972.
Yeah, Sam knows Martin Brodeur's birthday on the dot. I would be worried about that if I were Martin Brodeur, but others may not be so worried. So, Sam, you've taken a 2-1 lead. So, Sam, you also get to go first this one.
Woo!
The next one, another man who has his number up in the rafters. When is Patrick Eliash's birthday?
That's a good question.
I only ask good questions.
See, he just retired recently, right? So,
what's recent in your mind?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm doing math in my head, and I'm a little, my math may be off. Let's see here. I think he retired a couple years ago. He was 40. I'm going to say December 6th, 1977.
All right, what are your thoughts, Dave?
Let's go April 10th of 77.
And what did you say, Sam? What was the date?
December 6th, 1977.
Okay, Dave gets the point there. You were close on the date. You were just a year off. He was April 13th, 1976.
Close.
Now, another player who might see his number in the rafters is Travis Zajac. So I'm going to send this one to Dave. Dave, what is Travis Zajac's birthday?
All right, let's go August 5th, 85.
Sam, what's your guess?
I would say June 25th, 1986.
You had him until the year. You're a year off, Sam. He's May 13th, 1985, which means Dave has gotten his third point. So this one, Dave, you could win it here. Sam, you go first. When is Captain America Jack Hughes' birthday?
I don't know. I would say May 23rd, 2001.
May 23rd, 2001. Dave, what's your guess?
Let's go running theme here of April. April 27th of 2001.
You guys are close. But Sam gets the point. May 14th, 2001.
Yes.
Oh.
Sam, I think you got it by like 2 days. All right. And here comes the tiebreaker. Future New Jersey Devil and Swedish royalty, Lucas Raymond. Sam, what is the 2020 draft prospect Lucas Raymond's birthday?
Oh, I have no clue. But I'm going to have to guess, right?
Yeah. That's why this is like pin the tail on the donkey. You're blind.
Let's just say it's June 25th, 2002.
Okay. Dave?
All right. Let's go July 12th, 2002.
Sam, you won the game.
What?
The date is March 28th, 2002. Sam, you won the game. You were lucky that I felt charitable on my birthday and I gave you a point even though you were both 3 years off on Bobby Holik's birthday.
I almost got Danica and he got Marty. So you got to give us that.
Yeah, you guys were really close on a couple of them. The Bobby Holik was not your best effort, but the Elias you were close with. Hughes you were both very close with, so good job on you. But what we'll remember is that Bobby Holik travesty.
Well, you have a birthday today. You got to talk to us on the line. So I would say it's a win for you for sure.
It's definitely a win for me. I don't have to play these games. That's why I only do it like once a year. I am the game player, and I do it for the fans. But Dave, I know you got a couple things in the works a little bit over at Pucks and Pitchforks. What do you got coming up?
I do. We're running a little mini mock draft with the Devils' first 3 draft picks. So I'll be giving my opinion on who I think the Devils will be taking at number 7, 18, and 20. And most recently, I wrote a piece on 3 players the Devils could acquire from the Arizona Coyotes. And I'm going to change it up and do 3 players the Devils could acquire from the Vegas Golden Knights. As we all know, they're no strangers to trading with the Devils. So I'm saying I'm cooking up a couple guys who maybe the Devils hires on, and we'll see. So got a couple things coming up, and be on the lookout for it the next couple days.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I am big on Riley Smith. I'm not trying to persuade you to change anything in your article, but I personally am a fan of Riley Smith. So, in case you were looking for inquiries.
It is your birthday, and I'll strongly consider it, but he was not on the list, only because he's 29 years old, and I believe he has 2 or 3 years left on his contract. It doesn't really quite fit what the Devils are trying to do, I believe. I think they should maybe kick the tires on someone a little bit younger instead of a 29-year-old with 3 years left on his contract. But we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll give it off to someone else and put him on the list just because it's your birthday.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me. Happy birthday, Nick. Take care, guys.
That is Dave Brown, a Pucks and Pitchforks blog, being a good sport about losing to me in the game. Nick, I don't know how I won. It was a miracle that I won. And are you reading something, or did your screen froze? Oh, okay. You're still alive there. I was talking and I wasn't sure, because sometimes when you're still like this, you don't even know if the screen froze. So, but anyway.
Well, that's the thing, is that last week I realized that my gain was catching like every breath I take, so I just stopped breathing in between me talking. So that ends up with me just like waiting it out a lot of times.
Gotcha.
Just for the next person talking. So I don't mean to scare you, but I'm here.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure, because it's your birthday, and are you having a happy birthday today? I mean, you get to do a podcast with me. That's the greatest gift of all.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good podcast. So we had Rhys, we had JD, 2 amazing guests.
Thank you.
I'm excited to. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to peddle this podcast to other people when I try to get on more guests. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I added a new prop to my bunker studio. That's the Primetime Radio virtual bunker studio that we are building. Taking about 3 to 5 months to build, but that's the first part. It's the little decoration, so it looks pretty good. Yeah, we're getting there. Alrighty, well, I'm wearing my Penn State hat today because the Big Ten football is going to be back October 24th. Yeah. In a couple years, Penn State, West Virginia would go head-to-head. But anyway, we're a hockey podcast, and we want to thank Rhys and JD for coming on, giving us some great intel, scouting. Nick, you have anything plugged this week?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on Pucks and Pitchforks. I can't even keep track of it, but we got so much draft content, it's ridiculous. As Dave said, we got free agency and trade content coming up. Me personally, I'm doing I finally did the thing that I promised, Sam, where I looked at that Sports Illustrated article from Matt Larkin from 3 years ago and kind of assessed where he predicted the team would be and where the team is now. So that's up on pucksandpitchforks.com right now. We're going to take a look at Alexander Holtz next as a prospect to love. But we got a ton going on. Just go to pucksandpitchforks.com. There will be something from me and Vinny almost every day, and the other writers will fill in between as well.
Yeah, and we'll be dropping the podcast at midnight. Till next time, Devils fans, let's go Devils.